If a boy with duct-taped boots said he could heal your child, would you stop to listen? It was a brisk morning in Greenville, Mississippi, the kind that stung your fingers and turned your breath into mist. Outside the busy entrance of St. Luke's Children's Hospital, where anxious parents came and went, one boy sat still. He wasn't begging. He wasn't crying. He just watched, quietly sketching in a battered notebook on a piece of cardboard. His name was Caleb Brooks, 9 years old, wiry and quiet, with glasses that didn't quite sit straight on his nose. His jacket hung too big on his shoulders, and the toe of one boot was held together with duct tape. To most people, he was invisible. But that morning, a man named William Trent wasn't invisible. He stepped out of a black SUV with his 6-year-old daughter, Ellie, cradled in his arms. Since a tragic accident, Ellie hadn't taken a single step. William had money, power, but he didn't have hope, not anymore. Then as he passed the boy, Caleb stood and spoke 6 words that would stop William in his tracks and change all their lives forever. "Sir, I can help her walk." It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a plea. It was a quiet promise from a boy who had nothing except the belief that healing could begin in the most unexpected places. Caleb Brooks didn't look like a miracle worker. He was just a skinny 9-year-old kid with cracked glasses, duct-taped boots, and a too-big jacket that dragged past his hands. But what he lacked in appearance, he made up for in something rare: faith. Not the kind you hear in sermons, but the kind that quietly shows up when no one's watching. Every Saturday, he sat outside St. Luke's Children's Hospital on a flattened piece of cardboard, scribbling quietly in an old sketchbook unnoticed by most. But Caleb noticed everything. On a cloudy morning that threatened rain, William Trent, a weary businessman in his late 40s, pulled up to the hospital in his luxury SUV. He wasn't thinking about miracles. He was thinking about the latest round of physical therapy for his daughter Ellie, who had been paralyzed for months following a tragic car accident. William was exhausted, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. The smile that used to live in Ellie's eyes had faded. Her legs hadn't moved in half a year. He stepped out carefully, lifting Ellie from her booster seat, wrapped tight in a pink blanket, and started toward the hospital doors. That's when it happened. A quiet voice, clear and still, cut through the cold air. "Sir, I can help your daughter walk again." William froze. His mind searched for sarcasm, for a scam, for some half-baked prank. But when he turned to the voice, all he saw was Caleb, small, calm, sincere. "What did you say?" William asked sharply. "I said, I can help her walk again," Caleb repeated, as if it were as simple as reading the weather. William looked the boy up and down. A child healer. Outside a hospital in patched-up clothes. Absurd. He turned and walked away. But all day as he sat through appointments filled with complicated terms and disheartening updates, nerve damage, no guarantees, extensive therapy, that boy's voice kept ringing in his head. Not with desperation, not with hope, just certainty. By afternoon, as he buckled Ellie back into the car, William caught sight of Caleb again, still there, still sitting, still watching. This time William walked over. "You think this is a joke?" he snapped. "You don't even know her." "I don't have to know her," Caleb said, standing up, his voice steady. "But I know how the body remembers. My mom taught me before she passed. She was a physical therapist." William scoffed. "So what, you watched your mom stretch some legs and now you're a doctor?" "I watched her help a man walk again after 5 years in a wheelchair," Caleb said without blinking. "She said healing isn't always about machines. Sometimes it's about patience and believing when nobody else will." A long pause. William clenched his jaw. The sensible thing to do was walk away. But he didn't. "Tomorrow, Harrington Park, noon. Don't be late." "He'll be there?" Caleb nodded. And he was. The next day, Caleb sat under a big oak tree in Harrington Park, his sketchbook replaced by a small gym bag. Inside a towel, a jar of cocoa butter, a tennis ball, and a cloth pouch of warm rice. William arrived with Ellie in her wheelchair, his arms crossed in silent judgment. Caleb didn't flinch. He greeted them both, knelt beside Ellie, and gently asked, "Can I touch your legs?" Just light stretches. If anything feels weird, you say stop, okay? Ellie nodded. The next hour unfolded like a slow sunrise. Caleb warmed Ellie's muscles with heat packs, massaged pressure points, and began gently rotating her legs. No yanking, no shouting, just calm, guided movement. And all the while, he talked to her about cartoons, colors, candy, helping her relax without even realizing it. "Do you feel that?" Caleb asked after a light tap on her knee. Ellie blinked. "A little," she whispered. William leaned in. His daughter hadn't responded to touch in weeks. He didn't say anything, but something shifted in his eyes. Caleb smiled. "That's your body talking. It remembers." By the end of the session, Ellie was grinning just a little, but it was the first smile William had seen in months. When William offered Caleb money, the boy shook his head. "I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this because," she smiled. And that was the moment William realized something unbelievable. This boy wasn't a miracle worker. He was something even rarer, a spark of hope that refused to be ignored. William Trent had always believed in science. Data reports, proven results. That was how he built his business empire. But now, standing in the middle of Harrington Park, watching a 9-year-old boy in duct-taped boots gently stretch his daughter's legs, he wasn't so sure what to believe anymore. The boy's name was Caleb Brooks, and nothing about him screamed miracle worker. He was small, quiet, and dressed like someone the world had forgotten. But there was something about his hands, gentle, deliberate, and something about his voice, calm, assured. He wasn't pretending to know. He did know. Caleb hadn't asked for money. He hadn't handed out flyers or made grand promises. He'd just asked for one thing: a chance. And William, out of frustration, desperation, or something deeper he couldn't explain, had said yes. Now, on their third visit to the park, something had changed. Ellie Williams' 6-year-old daughter was no longer the withdrawn girl she had been just weeks ago. Her laughter returned, soft and cautious at first. She asked Caleb questions, giggled at his stories, and began participating in the exercises with something resembling. Caleb placed a warm rice pack over Ellie's thighs and looked up. "Ready to try some toe curls today?" he asked. Ellie nodded. "Let's do it." William sat nearby on a fold-out chair, arms crossed, but no longer skeptical. He'd watched for 3 straight weekends as Caleb worked with patients and care. No machines, no therapy rooms, just human connection and time. "You ever think of being a therapist someday?" William asked during a break. Caleb shrugged. "That's what my mama did. I want to do what she did. Help people feel like they matter." "You already do," William said quietly. Caleb didn't respond, just smiled slightly, and returned to Ellie, who was trying to wiggle her toes. Then came the setback. On the 4th Sunday, when William pulled into the park, Ellie wasn't smiling. Her eyes were red, her shoulders slumped. She refused to speak during the drive. As William lifted her into the wheelchair, she snapped, "I'm tired of trying." Caleb approached gently, his bag in one hand. "What happened?" he asked. Ellie looked away. "I tried moving my legs this morning. Nothing had." William sighed. "She's been like this all weekend. Doesn't want to talk, doesn't want to try." Caleb crouched in front of her. "You're allowed to be mad," he said. "You're allowed to feel stuck. But if you stop now, your legs might stop trying too." "I'm scared," Ellie whispered. Caleb leaned in closer. "Me too. But scared doesn't mean stop. It means you're getting close to something big." William, who had been silent, blinked. That was the first time Ellie had admitted fear aloud. He knelt beside her and took her hand. "Let's try one more time," he said softly. "You did," Caleb said, voice steady. From that point on, nothing was the same. They came back each weekend. William brought extra supplies, even lunch. Caleb never asked for anything, but always shared a quiet thank you. Ellie began asking to go to the park during the week. She stretched at home, drew pictures of her helper, and told her teachers about the boy who made her legs remember. Word spread. Other families showed up. A little girl recovering from a stroke. A teenage boy with a walker. Caleb didn't turn them away. He made time for each one. Taught parents how to massage limbs, warm muscles, encourage gently. And Ellie, she went from sliding her foot to lifting her knee from toe curls to balancing briefly on both feet. William watched it all. A boy who'd lost everything but still chose to show up. A daughter who'd found joy again. And one evening as they packed up, William turned to Caleb. "Where do you go after this?" Caleb hesitated. "Sometimes I stay with friends, sometimes not. You have a place tonight." Caleb shook his head. William exhaled. "Come home with us. We've got a guest room. It's yours if you want it." Caleb blinked. "Really?" William nodded. "After what you've done for my daughter, how could I not?" The next morning, Caleb showed up with a backpack, a rolled-up blanket, and a quiet smile. Ellie shouted when she saw him. "Caleb!" William opened the door. "Welcome home, son." In that moment, the boy with nothing became part of a family, and something more. He became hope. The sun had barely risen over Birmingham, casting long shadows over the empty streets, when Caleb Brooks, dressed in his oversized coat and patched-up boots, made his way to Harrington Park. In one hand, he carried his worn-out gym bag filled with homemade tools, a tennis ball, warm rice packs wrapped in cloth, and a towel his late mother once used when she volunteered at free clinics. That day felt different. The air was crisper, the sky clearer, and Caleb could sense that something big was coming, something that couldn't be measured by how many degrees a limb moved or how many steps were taken. It was something deeper, more powerful. By noon, William Trent arrived in his SUV with his daughter Ellie, just like every Sunday. Except today, Ellie wasn't chattering or smiling. Her eyes were narrowed with focus, lips pressed into a firm line. She looked ready. "Morning, Caleb," William said, lifting Ellie gently. "Morning," Caleb replied, already laying the towel on the grass beneath the big oak tree. "You up for it today, Ellie?" Ellie nodded. "Let's do it. No jokes, no distractions, just purpose." Caleb guided her onto the towel and began warming her muscles with the rice pack. William knelt beside him silently, helping. Over the weeks, the man who once doubted the boy had become his quiet partner, stretching, lifting, holding, encouraging. Then Caleb looked up. "Ellie, today we're going to try standing." William's eyes widened. "You sure?" "She's ready," Caleb said, not with hope, but with quiet certainty. He showed William where to support Ellie's arms. He steadied. "Okay," he said softly, "on 3. Ellie closed her eyes. 1, 2, 3. They lifted. Her legs trembled. Her arms shook. But she didn't fall. She stood. Not for long, just a few seconds, but in that moment time froze. A mother nearby. "I'm standing," Ellie whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. "Yes, you are," Caleb said, barely holding back tears. William took a step back, letting go. "She didn't fall." "My God," he murmured. "She's really doing it." Then Ellie took one shaky step, and another, and a third. She tumbled forward right into her father's arms, both of them laughing, crying, holding on like the world had just changed. Because for them, it had. That evening back home, William sat at the kitchen counter watching Caleb eat a bowl of cereal. Ellie was upstairs video chatting with her cousins, recounting every detail of her first walk. "You know, you changed everything," William said. Caleb looked up, spoon halfway to his mouth. "I did." William nodded. "Not just for her. For me. For this whole family." Caleb lowered his spoon. "That's what my mama would have wanted. She always said healing doesn't just happen to bodies, it happens to hearts too." William stepped closer, hand resting on the boy's shoulder. "You ever think about what's next?" Caleb shrugged. "I don't know. I just want to keep helping people. Like she did." "You will," William said. "Well, make sure of it." That next Sunday, the park was different. Not just a place for healing anymore, it had become a community. Folding chairs lined the edge of the grass. Thermoses of coffee passed from hand to hand. Other children came with braces, walkers, nervous parents. And right in the center stood Caleb Brooks, the boy with nothing who gave everything. He didn't charge a penny. He didn't need applause. He just opened his arms and said, "Let's begin." The sky over Harrington Park was an overcast gray, casting a soft, diffused light on the grass below. It was the 4th Sunday since Caleb Brooks had first met William Trent and his daughter Ellie, and usually by now, Caleb would be warming Ellie's legs with the rice packs, chatting gently, coaxing her into stretches. But not today. Today, Ellie sat stiffly in her wheelchair, her arms crossed, her jaw clenched. Caleb knelt beside her. "Hey," he said gently. "You ready to get started?" Ellie didn't look at him. No. William hovered nearby, looking uncomfortable, torn between frustration and concern. "She's been upset all weekend," he said quietly. Tried. Caleb nodded slowly. Then, still kneeling, he turned to face Ellie directly. "I get it," he said. She didn't respond. "I really do. You know, when my mom got sick, I tried everything I could think of to help her. Home remedies, begging clinics for extra meds, even praying harder. But nothing worked." Ellie glanced at him just for a second. "I wanted to quit too," Caleb continued. "Wanted to stop hoping. It hurt too much. But then she looked at me one night and said, 'You don't stop just because it's hard. You stop when it doesn't matter anymore.'" Ellie blinked. "What if it never works? What if I try forever and still can't walk?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. "Then we keep trying anyway. Because every time you try, you're telling your legs they're still part of you, that you haven't forgotten them. And maybe, just maybe, they'll remember how to be yours again." "I'm scared," she whispered. That was the first time she'd said those words aloud. Caleb's voice softened. "Me too. Every time I come here, I'm scared it'll fail you. That it'll let your dad down. That I'm just some kid with a rice bag pretending to fix things." Ellie turned to him fully. "Nope," Caleb said, smiling faintly. "Because I believe in you. And I think deep down you believe in you too." A silence passed between them. Not empty, but full. Full of unsaid things, shared fears, small sparks of hope. Finally, Ellie nodded. "Okay, let's try." William, who had been watching the exchange with his arms crossed, stepped forward. His voice cracked as he said, "It'll help too." They worked slower that day. Caleb was more patient than ever, speaking less, allowing Ellie to focus inward. William massaged her knees, following Caleb's instructions with care. Every small movement was met with soft encouragement. Then, after nearly 30 minutes, Ellie paused. "I think maybe," Caleb grinned. "That's something." Suddenly, she shifted slightly in the chair. Her right foot just a little slid forward. William gasped. "Do it again," he said, kneeling beside her. She did. Twice. Caleb didn't cheer. He didn't need to. He just looked at her and said, "Told you your legs remember." Ellie beamed. Later that day, as they packed up, Ellie looked up at Caleb and asked, "Can I tell you something?" "Of course. I think when you talk to me, my legs listen. Not because of the rice or stretches or whatever, but because you talk like I'm whole, like I'm not broken." Caleb's eyes softened. "That's because you're not." She smiled. "Then I want to try harder." And she did. From that day forward, Ellie didn't miss a single Sunday. And Caleb, still just a boy in a patched-up coat, never treated her like anything less than a girl who could move mountains. 9 weeks, 9 Sundays, 9 times Caleb Brooks, the quiet 9-year-old with duct-taped boots, had shown up at Harrington Park without fail. No fancy credentials, no money, just a notebook, a bag of homemade therapy tools, and a belief that the body remembers even when it forgets how to move. That morning, the air had a different kind of stillness. Even Jonathan Trent could feel it. He wheeled his daughter Ellie toward their usual spot under the big oak tree where Caleb had already set up the towel, the rice packs, and his jar of cocoa butter. But this time there was a hush in the park, like everyone was holding their breath. Morning Caleb greeted his voice as calm as always. Morning Ellie whispered back, her face more focused than ever. No giggles, no jokes, just determination. Jonathan knelt beside Caleb. Caleb nodded. "She's ready." Together, the two of them helped Ellie out of her chair. Caleb steadied her knees. Jonathan stood behind her, hands ready under her arms. 1, 2, 3. Ellie pushed. Her arms trembled. Her knees buckled. But then she stood, really stood. No straps, no pulleys, no machines, just her own 2 feet holding her up. Gasps spread through the park. Children froze mid-play. A mom covered her mouth, eyes wide. A man lowered his coffee cup slowly, as if afraid to blink and miss the moment. "I'm standing," Ellie said, her voice stunned. "You are," Jonathan whispered, barely breathing. Then Caleb released his hold just an inch, just for a second, and Ellie didn't fall. Jonathan's hand slowly pulled away. He stepped back. Ellie was standing all by herself. "Oh my God," he muttered. She's doing it." Caleb was still kneeling, his eyes locked on Ellie, his expression unreadable. Not proud, not surprised, just present, calm. Like he always knew this moment would come. And then Ellie took a step. One shaky, deliberate step. Then another. Then, because she was 6 years old and didn't know fear the way adults do a third, she stumbled, and Jonathan caught her in his arms. He was laughing and crying at the same time. "You did it," he whispered. "You really did it." Ellie looked over her shoulder at Caleb. "You said I would." He gave her a soft grin. "I said we'd try." The applause started slow from one parent near the bench, then spread like wildfire through the park. But Caleb didn't acknowledge it. He just sat back on the towel arms, resting on his knees, watching Ellie hug her father. Later that evening, back at the house, Jonathan stood in the kitchen. Caleb was, Jonathan said, voice quiet. "You changed everything." Caleb didn't look up. "I did. My daughter walked today. Not because of a hospital, not because of therapy machines, but because a kid with nothing decided to show up, week after week." Caleb's voice was even. "That's what my mama would have done." Jonathan nodded, throat tightening. "I wish she could have seen this." Caleb didn't hesitate. "She did. I think she sees everything." And in that moment, Jonathan understood. This boy, this child who had lost so much, wasn't a fluke or a miracle. He was the real deal. And he wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Rumors spread like wildfire in the dry heat of summer. A nurse from the Children's Medical Center happened to be walking her dog through Harrington Park on Sunday morning. What she saw made her stop in her tracks. Ellie Trent, the girl, who once couldn't move her legs, was standing in the grass, smiling and slowly lifting her knees, one at a time. And next to her wasn't a doctor or a therapist. It was Caleb Brooks, the boy, who used to sit outside the hospital doors in a worn-out coat and duct-taped shoes. The nurse didn't say a word. She just stood there quietly watching. When she got home, she told her sister, who worked in patient services at the hospital. Then the story reached a physical therapist who asked Jonathan Trent directly, "I heard Ellie's making fast progresses." "It true." Jonathan only smiled. "Yes. Thanks to someone none of us expected." The next Sunday, Caleb came to the park as usual. But this time, under the same old oak tree, 2 other families were waiting. A little boy with a walker, a girl recovering from a stroke. They had heard about the boy who helped Ellie Trent stand, and they wanted to meet him. Jonathan approached Caleb. "You don't have to do this, you know." Caleb just tightened the strap on his bag. "I want to." He spent the whole afternoon doing what he did best, listening, guiding, and gently encouraging. For each child, he found a way to make them feel, not like patients, but like people who could and would get better. "I can't promise miracles," Caleb told one worried father, "but he'll try." Ellie sat nearby watching everything with pride in her eyes. She didn't complain about sharing Caleb. Instead, she whispered to her dad, "I like seeing him help others." "Yeah," Jonathan replied. "Makes me feel like we're part of something good." The Sunday after that, 5 families showed up. Then 11. A local pastor brought folding chairs. A nearby calf began sending coffee and donuts. Flyers popped up across town. Free movement class Sundays at 12 p.m. Harrington Park. Caleb's name wasn't printed, but everyone knew who it was. A reporter came by, camera and notebook in hand. When Jonathan pulled Caleb aside and asked, "Are you okay with all this?" Caleb simply said, "As long as they're coming for their kids, not for me, I'm okay." The story landed on page 2 of the Birmingham Sunday Post. 9-year-old boy with a gift for healing helps dozens recover in City Park. They didn't print his real name per Caleb's request, but the community already knew. And for the first time since his mother passed away, people didn't just see Caleb, they saw who he truly was. A local doctor offered to mentor him. A nonprofit wanted to sponsor equipment. A group of tutors volunteered to help Caleb return to school. Yet the boy never changed. He still laid out his blanket the same way, still wore the same old shoes, still checked on Ellie first before helping anyone else. But now that once quiet park had become the heart of a movement, and the boy who once had nothing was now the soul of an entire community. She stood up. The shout broke the silence of Harrington Park, a place once filled only with wild grass and the creaking of a lone swing in the wind. But today was different. Today, something miraculous was happening right beneath the canopy of that old oak tree. Caleb Brooks, a 9-year-old boy with duct-taped shoes and a heart far too big for his worn-out coat, was kneeling in front of Ellie Trent, the little girl who hadn't been able to move from the waist down since a terrible accident. Just like every Sunday before, Caleb had laid out his old blanket and unpacked his usual items, a bag of warm rice, a tennis ball, and a jar of lotion. But this time the air felt charged with something more hope. Jonathan Trent, Ellie's father, knelt behind her, gripping her shoulders for support. Caleb gently adjusted her knees and feet. Just like before, he whispered, "We're going to help you stand, but you have to do the rest." Ellie closed her eyes. Around them, a small crowd had gathered. Families Caleb had helped, nurses, doctors, curious neighbors. Everyone held their breath. "Daddy, I'm ready," Ellie whispered. "Okay, count with me. 1, 2, 3. Jonathan lifted her gently under the arms. Caleb steadied her knees and feet. In a heartbeat, Ellie rose, standing upright for the first time in 6 long months. The crowd froze. Her legs trembled, but did not collapse. Her face dripped with sweat, but her smile shone like sunlight breaking through the leaves. "I am standing," she gasped. Caleb simply nodded, eyes shimmering. "Yes, you really are." Jonathan stepped back, letting go, and Ellie stayed standing. Those tiny legs, once powerless, now stood strong, defiant, as if they'd never known weakness. One step, then another, then a third, before falling into her father's arms. But no one saw it as a fall. It was a triumphant victory forged by willpower, by love, and by the unimaginable patience of a boy no one had expected. Applause erupted. A mother clutched her son, sobbing. A little boy with a walker shouted, "She did it!" Ellie smiled through her tears, nodding at Caleb. "You were right," she whispered. "I did it." Caleb smiled and bowed his head. "I only said we'd try." But everyone there knew this boy had changed that girl's life forever. No one rushed to leave that day. Families stayed behind, talking, sharing their journeys. Some prayed, many hugged, but all of them felt the same thing: life was blooming again in a place that had once been so quiet. That evening in the Trent's kitchen, Jonathan stood watching Caleb pour milk into a cereal bowl. "You know," he said, his voice rough, "you've changed everything." Caleb didn't look up. "I did." Jonathan placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "My daughter walked today not because of doctors, not because of medicine, but because of a child with a heart too big for that old coat." Caleb was silent for a moment. Then he whispered, "That's what my mom would have done." Jonathan swallowed hard. "I wish she could see this." "I think she does," Caleb replied. "She always did." By the 10th Sunday, Harrington Park no longer looked like just another forgotten green patch in Birmingham. The cracked court, the rusted swings, and the old oak tree had become symbols of something much greater, a movement born not in hospitals or churches, but from the heart of a boy who had nothing but gave everything. That Sunday morning, Caleb Brooks showed up like he always did. His oversized coat flapped in the breeze, and his duct-taped boots scuffed quietly against the grass. He wasn't early this time, he was right on time. Families had already gathered, some familiar, some new. Fold-out chairs lined up in rows. Children in wheelchairs and on walkers waited patiently, with hope in their eyes. But this Sunday felt different. Caleb didn't need to speak. He nodded at Miss Trent, who returned the gesture with a warm smile. Ellie, radiant with energy, was already wiggling her toes in her chair. She grinned at Caleb as he laid out his towel and supplies, rice packs, cocoa butter, pressure balls, his mother's simple tools of healing. And then the surprise happened. A nurse from the local hospital stepped forward with a clipboard. "Caleb," she said gently, "we've spoken with your old school district. If you want, we can help you enroll again." The crowd turned silent. Caleb blinked. He hadn't thought about school in years. Not since his mother passed, not since survival took over. He started unsure. Ellie reached for his hand. "You've helped so many of us," she said. "Now it's time to let people help you." He looked around, dozens of parents, children, and even strangers waiting on his decision. But not with pressure, with love. He nodded. "Okay, I'd like that." Applause broke out. Not wild, not theatrical, just pure gratitude. Gratitude for the boy who never asked for anything, who showed up with a smile, warmth in his hands and healing in his heart. That afternoon, Ellie walked again. 2 more steps. On her own. And by week's end, the city council had voted unanimously to allocate funding to build the Movement Garden, a new community space dedicated to physical therapy and hope. At the center of the plans, a bronze bench under a replica of that old oak tree and a plaque that read, "In honor of Caleb Brooks, who showed us that healing begins with compassion." Sometimes the people we overlook, the ones with tattered shoes and silent strength, carry the greatest power to heal. Caleb didn't have a title, a degree, or a clinic. What he had was love, patience, and the willingness to show up again and again. That's often all it takes to change a life. We don't need perfection to make a difference. We just need heart. Have you ever known someone like Caleb? Or maybe are you a Caleb in someone's life? Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, real-life stories like this. Stories that remind us what it truly means to care, to fight, and to hope. Hit that like button if you believe compassion can heal more than medicine ever could. Because sometimes the smallest hands carry the biggest miracles.